Alright, sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened. The video happened to stop. I don't know why, but welcome to part two. Make sure you go back and check part one because where I left off was at Zark. So if you want to know what else was in the deck, you'll have to go back to the previous video. Otherwise, we will continue with the extra deck. Which this video will be pretty short because it is a part two and the video stopped pretty close to the end, which is kind of disappointing. But back into it anyway. So, first up, we've got First Synchros, Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. This right here is one of your big pendulum plays. Because you also can, when it's synchro summoned, I believe, or when it's special summoned in general, you can go and get a pendulum card from your pen zone, special summon it to your main monster zone. Mainly the target you want to target from your pen zone would be a level 7, because you can also get your big XZ's plays from your Zark. Because with Meteor Burst on the field, you get a Pendulum Zone off your Pendulum Zone. So you got Synchro and Pendulum. That's 2 materials for Zark. You can XZ summon after that to go and get a 3rd material ready to go to the graveyard. At the same time, when you get rid of your XZs for a Link monster at all, you get 3 materials in your graveyard for Zark, all at the same time. That leaves only the fusion, which is quite the hardest to get into the graveyard, especially for the Zark plays that I have. You have to be able to get rid of your fusion monster at the right time. You don't just get rid of it because you feel like Zark would be the best play, because your opponent can stop Miracle Synchro Fusion with no problem. If they have that play, because Ghost Bell will stop Miracle Synchro Fusion because you're banishing stuff for materials. But yeah, if they Ghost Bell it, then you've pretty much lost your entire chance of getting Zark. So your main idea for the fusion part of Zark is you want to try and make sure you have the right time to use the actual Miracle Synchro Fusion, as well as get the fusion back in your graveyard. Because if you can keep a fusion on the field, your opponent will believe that you're summoning something else sometimes, until they realize that you have a Pendulum, Synchro, XZs, and Synchro monster in your graveyard. Then at that point, it's too late. But yeah, big XZs play, Link play, Pendulum Zone from your main zone play, especially level 7s. Because if you target level 5s or 3s like Persona or Mirage, you don't really get a play off of that. Besides Link summoning, and then you're wasting an entire play to get Zark out, a possible Zark. Now, the thing about Zark is if you can't go into the play and if you don't know that you can't for sure get Zark, do not do it. It's a mistake to attempt to go for Zark if you are unsure that you can do it. Now, if you're going against a deck and you're like, oh, I'm definite gonna get this, and you will get it automatically, then by all means go for it. Otherwise, you have to be sure to do it. Otherwise, your Zark will not appear. Next up, for the next synchro is Clearwing Synchro Dragon. This is another level 7 synchro. It doesn't bring anything from your pen zone. It only really negates level 5 and higher monsters. So it's levels, remember that. Not ranks, levels. So it doesn't negate XZ's monsters. It can negate fusion monsters as a quick effect. If you do negate the activation or effect of a level 5 or higher, you get to destroy it. And if you do that as well, you get the attack of that monster added to this. So you can basically, what is it? You can, I believe, negate a Chaos Max and gain its 4,000 attack. And then destroy, or attempt to destroy the Chaos Max, but you can't because Chaos Max can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. Or no, it can't be destroyed by battle. It just can't be destroyed by card effects or targeted by card effects. But you can overbeat Chaos Max with Clearwing or Crystal Wing because Chaos Max is a ritual level 8 or 10, I believe. I don't remember, but yeah. This is also a possible material for Zark, but it wouldn't be your biggest material to rely on. This is just mainly for if you go against high-level monsters, or basically you're trying to negate level 5 or higher monsters specifically. So, high-level monsters of 5 or higher, if they run decks of that, you want to run that at least. Next up for the last synchro we have is Supreme King Dragon Clearing. So, this card right here, in my past, I thought it required a Dark Tuner, but at that point, one of my friends had let me know, oh no, it doesn't require a Dark Tuner, it just requires a Dark Pendulum monster as a material. So, at that point, I was like, yeah, this is actually pretty good now. Because you can use Noble Dragon even. You can use Odd Eye Synchron, because it's a level 2 and you're going for a level 8, not a 7. So you can go off of maybe... I don't know. It's a good question. It's possible. But this is also, when this is Synchro Summon, you get to nuke your opponent's field entirely. You blow open your opponent's field. But this can easily be negated because this is on Synchro Summon. So if they negate the summon, you don't get the effect. Otherwise, if this were to attack, you can destroy instead one monster your opponent controls and deal damage equal to its attack, but the attack doesn't do anything else after that. So basically, if you're going for damage, you'd want either to swing over the monster if you want it to die, and especially go to the graveyard if you need it to go to the graveyard instead of helping out your opponent in any way. Otherwise, you burn your opponent for whatever damage you can make. Next up, we got the Xyz. It's another short part of this extra deck. But, next up, we run 2 Odd Eyes Absolutes. The reason being you want to run 2 is because there are times when you get 1 out and it leaves the field practically instantly because your opponent does something to it. Because there are times when you can go into this twice. Not once, twice. And this is another one of your big Zark plays, especially if you're trying to go for Zark and if you know you can go for Zark. And if you're betting on Zark, good luck, because after that, if you're going all the way to Zark, you have to at least try. Otherwise, you're giving everything up for no reason. But its effect, it requires 2 level 7 monsters. It doesn't have to be dragons. It doesn't have to be pendulums. It just has to be 2 level 7s. So basically like Red Eyes or something. You could even run Red Eyes in this deck, possibly. I wouldn't know because I haven't tried it yet. But if your opponent were to attack any card on your field, or at all, you can go and detach a material and negate the attack. And if you do, you can special summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your hand or graveyard. So you could even special summon the monster you literally just detached, because the effect to special summon happens after the negated attack is fully negated. Also, when this card would leave the field, if it would go to the graveyard in general, except from the extra deck, because it was never truly summoned. If this leaves the field anyway and goes to your graveyard, this effect will special summon automatically 1 Odd Eyes card from your extra deck. For free. You don't have to do a synchro of tuners or anything. You don't have to use a poly. You don't have to pendulum summon. You can get them out for free. But you have to have the zones to point to. Which this, if you're going into this, most of the time you will have a zone for that to point to. That way you have stuff to get back. Because you're going to need that Vortex on the field, especially after you get rid of this thing. Because this is an attack negation. If this does stay on the field, it's okay, because you can negate attacks. Especially if your opponent attempts to get rid of it, that's what you want. Either to leave the field on your opponent's turn, or for your opponent to try and attempt to attack and negate it. Because this does not target. It just negates the attack in general. So this could even stop Chaos Max for all those players who don't like Chaos Max. Specifically me. But yeah, it's a great summon to go into Vortex, because then you get Vortex's effect even when it's special summon. You get to go and return a card from your opponent, a face-up card your opponent controls, back to your hand. or even the extra deck, especially if it's an extra deck card, even if it's a fusion or an XZs, they will have to get the materials out again. Next up, we have number 11, Big Eye. The reason I debated between this and another card, I don't remember what the other card was, but the reason I put this in here is because there are times when your opponent has a monster that can't exactly be destroyed, but it can be targeted by card effects, and then you get to use it for your own. That, and you get to use it as a link material, so your opponent doesn't have a chance to ever get it back, especially if they want their effects to go off. So you can detach a material. It requires 2 level 7s. You can detach a material, target a card on your opponent's field, and you get to take control of it permanently. The downside, though, is Big Eye cannot attack, but otherwise, why would you attack if you have the chance to go and take upon an opponent's monster so you can beat them down with it instead? Especially if you're going to use it for a link material at a later date. Otherwise, this is just for if you truly need another material, or you need to stop your opponent from having a certain card on your opponent's main monster zone. Specifically Sky Strikers, because if you take their Sky Strikers, they can't really do a whole lot. For the last bit of the extra deck, we have our Link monsters. The first one, we've got one Underclock Taker. It may not be the best link for Pendulums, but it definitely helps, because it's another link too you can go into that, and also if you do summon Vortex or Odd Eyes Absolute or Meteor Burst, which negates your opponents from activating effects during the battle phase, you can reduce your opponent's monster by whatever the card points to. So you can beat over it basically. That, and if you do happen to have another extra deck monster or another way to summon after this, especially if you have a monster here on the extra zone, especially if it's an extra deck monster, you can go into the next. There's another card in here that I can explain later. But like I said, this is another link too that you can go into, especially if it's an emergency because you've used Metal Foes probably a little bit too early, or maybe it just didn't stay on the field long enough. Otherwise, this is a good play. It's not great for attacking though, unless you have Phantom on the field, because then you can boost it by 1200, so it'd be a 22 for all those small monster players that you can beat over. The next monster I run is Nightmare Cerberus. The reason I run this is because there are some cards in this deck that you can discard and then get back. Because you can discard them, or you can, let's say, you have these two together. You get to draw a card as well. That, and you have this zone open, and then you have more link materials in general. But if you do link summon him while Underclock's on the field, you get to draw, discard, and target one card in your opponent's main monster zones and destroy it. Otherwise, it's pretty much, that's the only pretty much reason, is for the draw or the destruction. Either or both. Next up, we have one Heavy Metal Foes Electromite. This is the biggest, and if not the only, Pendulum Link card that you will ever run in Pendulums. If you do not run it in Pendulums, there is a problem. This is literally your holy savior of Pendulums, especially when you need a Pendulum summon. This thing requires 2 Pendulum monsters. It's kind of a little bit Pendulum-sided, but it needs to happen. If it's Link summoned, you can add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck face up to your extra deck. So you don't exactly get it to your hand, but you definitely can Pendulum summon it out. Especially if you've already got the cards in your hand ready to go. Also, you can target a monster in your pen zone or on the field if you want in general, except Metal Foes, and destroy it. If it was in your pen zone and it left the pen zone, you get to draw a card afterward. But when the effect activates, you destroy a card and you add 1 face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, which is pretty darn nice. And then you got 2 arrows, which are pointing down to your 2 zones, which is kind of, it's not the best, but it definitely works. Just have to remember, you always keep these arrows open for Pendulum summons. Don't do this with Pendulum summons or extra deck summons unless you have the stuff and you've already Pendulum summoned. Otherwise, you won't get very far off of Heavy Metal Foes at all. The most you'll get is probably like 1 other monster or maybe 1 extra deck monster, but that's pretty much your best bet. especially if you summon like an Absolute right here, you can link Heavy Metal Foes and Absolute away to get into the next link monster, which will be one Zephyr Metaltron, which takes 2 plus monsters from that were special from the extra deck. So even a Pendulum monster that was special from your extra deck, it doesn't have to be a Fusion XC, Synchro, or Link, or any of that stuff. It just has to be special from the extra deck. So you can use 3 Pendulum monsters from the extra deck if you wanted to, if you somehow got them out. After you link away into this, using a Heavy Metal Foes and an Absolute, you get a Vortex in any one of these 3 zones that you control. And if an extra deck monster or a special monster from the extra deck leaves these zones, you get to add a card from your graveyard or any card from your graveyard back to your hand. Especially if your like Pendulum summons were negated or something, you can immediately get a card back from your graveyard. That, and you can also target one extra deck monster that this card points to. You can banish it in one monster your opponent or extra deck monster your opponent controls for the turn. So let's say they maybe have like a Boral Sword, possibly, maybe a Saryuja. You can target a card in here, banish it for the turn, and they can banish that card. That's pretty much all it is as far as for like the extra deck protection. That, and you get 3 zones to possibly Pendulum summon up to. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. So, that was the Odd Eyes deck profile, guys. This is part 2 of it, so I hope you guys liked it. This is my personal build, so this is what I like versus what anybody else likes. I just find this play style very easy to play, and it's very fun. I don't like super extensive plays that stop all your opponent's shit, like Guard Dragons or something. Because all those Guard Dragon plays that have been announced and all that stuff that people have seen are super, like, once it happens, you can't play at all. Because you can either special them for the extra deck or you can't activate effects without getting negated or anything like that. Otherwise, this is my favorite playstyle of Odd Eyes, and it's the very first deck I've ever gotten into, especially into Pendulums with Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. It was the very first deck I got into. Otherwise, I hope you guys liked this video. This is my deck profile of Odd Eyes, Pendulum Dragons. If you liked this video, maybe comment down below, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to click that bell icon just to make sure you get the notification that I post new videos. Otherwise, you won't get the notice. But comment down below if you want to see me do next. If you want to see me do another deck, I can do my Magic Specters or I can do my Cubics if you want. I don't have a whole lot of decks though. But yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!